Way before Isiah Thomas was a member of those Bad Boys Pistons squads, he was the youngest of 8 siblings in one of the roughest parts of Chicago. Today, we'll go over his family and how much of an effect they had on him, namely his mom, who reportedly fought off gang members that were trying to recruit her children and fought off an abusive ex-husband. And maybe along the way we can decipher where Isiah Thomas gets his infectious smile from. I'm Jesse with Basketball Dive, and this is the story of Isiah Thomas's family.
Meet Isiah Thomas, one of the 50 best players ever in the NBA.
Just opposite of the Eisenhower Expressway, Isiah Lord Thomas III took his first steps inside a red-bricked building, but before Isiah was born on April 30th, 1961, he already had 8 other siblings living in that building, which was a 2-story house where they had lived on the first floor. This house was on Congress Street in Chicago, which is a crazy neighborhood where often not-so-kid-friendly things happened. I mean, this was the kind of neighborhood that demanded the consistent prayers of a mother and the firm protection of a father, but Isiah and his siblings didn't have the latter, at least not for long. Their father, Isiah Thomas II, hated the world basically. He didn't like entertainment, and the idea of his sons playing sports or being on the big screen really irked him. This is because he didn't want any of his children to entertain an audience of white people or to take part in an industry he believed came out of slavery.
He hated basketball. He hated all forms of entertainment. He used to tell us that entertainment came out of slavery. And he didn't like that African American men would perform in an arena for white males. He was
reportedly bitter every day because of the racism he had to face in the outside world, especially at work. And when he would come back home, he would take his frustration out on his wife, Mary Thomas. But Mary knew they would have to go their separate ways soon, but before she and her husband separated, she reportedly talked about it to her kids on several occasions. Then, one day the kids came home to meet their father's stuff already packed and ready to go. It was an awful sight for them, but they also rejoiced at the fact that their mother was finally free from domestic violence. Isiah's family story is unique, especially with everything his mom, Mary Thomas, had to do. Mary Thomas was born in Vicksburg, Mississippi, but when she was 16 years old, she got into a fight with another woman that led to her father sending her off to live in Chicago, Illinois. But how she ended up with Isiah Thomas II in the first place isn't really known. Besides, she told reporters one time, quote, "You're not going to hear nothing from me about him. It was up to me to raise my kids. Let's just say I did it myself," end quote. Indeed, when her husband left, she was forced to fend for all of her 9 children by her lonesome. For someone who had a limited educational background, finishing just elementary school, her career opportunities were very limited. She worked at the Community Youth Center and later for the Housing Authority in Chicago, but she never wanted to live in the housing projects. And even when, at a time, her caseworker insisted that her family be taken to the projects, she fought it, going as far as seeing the mayor, Richard J. Daley, at City Hall to defend her claim of continuing to live in her own private house instead of public housing. This was the length Mary Thomas was ready to go to protect and provide for those whom she loved. Mary also worked at Our Lady of Sorrows Catholic Church in their gym and kitchen while also raising her kids in the way of the Lord. The church also had a school in which Mary enrolled her kids into. While her kids got the conventional education, she reinforced their learning with what she called mother's wit. And one of the ways she did this was by talking to her kids about the situation of things. Quote, "I had a budget, and there were lots of times we'd eat only fair beans and grits so my children could go to school. We'd sit around the table and have meetings and talk about why they couldn't get shoes, and they would understand." According to Mary's second daughter, Ruby, their mother loved her children so much, but loved Isiah the most, possibly.
My mother spoiled all of her kids, all of us, especially her boys, but Isiah, oh my gosh. He did walk on water.
The two of them were practically inseparable, a sentiment Mary once shared, quote, "Even now I'll wake up at midnight or 1 in the morning and give him a call. I was kind of like his first coach. I'd always talk to him, and wherever I went, he went. We walked and talked many a day together when he was younger. He probably didn't understand what I was saying, but he looked up at me like he did," end quote. Then something extraordinary happened one day that has made Mary even more talked about today. The Vice Lords gang was a very notorious group in Chicago at the time, and after succeeding in recruiting young, unlucky guys in the neighborhood, they decided to give it a shot at the Thomas household. But oh man, they didn't know what was coming for them. There were reportedly up to 25 gang members who showed up at the door carrying guns and wearing black and gold colors. When Mary answered the door, they demanded she bring out her boys and have them join the Vice Lords. But Mary replied, "There's only one gang around here, and that's the Thomas gang." But when they persisted, Mary went into the house and came out with the shotgun and the words, "Get off my porch or I'll blow you across the expressway." And they turned away and left. Damn, that was cold-blooded, and it almost sounds fake. However, this was the fearlessness and courage that old Mary Thomas raised her kids in, per many reports. But as great a woman and as loving a mother as Mary was, she couldn't handle all her children alone. So the streets took over the reins of some parental responsibilities, and I tell you, not in a good way, as we will come to see. But Isiah was fortunate enough to not be jailed, killed, or to have fallen into a deadly addiction. And because of the bad neighborhood they apparently lived in, Isiah's mother and sister decided that he would leave Chicago and go to Indiana for college. After Isiah got drafted, he signed a $1.6 million deal with the Detroit Pistons, and the next thing he did was buy his mama a crib in the fanciest part of Chicago. Isiah also established the Mary's Court Foundation in her honor following her death. Mary died at the age of 87 in 2010 after suffering heart troubles for years. As much as Isiah tried to thank his mother for all of her sacrifice and dedication, he wasn't the only one that appreciated Mary Thomas's greatness. In Chicago, they named a street after her for her contributions to the community. She also received the ADC, or Aid to Dependent Children Award, for her dedication to humanity. When her daughter Ruby spoke to ESPN after her death, she said Mary used to have other children come home and she would share the little food she had with them. Additionally, even way before her passing, Hollywood couldn't help but pay her tribute too. In 1989, the movie A Mother's Courage, The Mary Thomas Story, was released to critical acclaim, starring the famous Alfre Woodard as Mary Thomas. I can tell you for free and not as an advertisement that the movie was great, and one of the things that the movie also showed was the struggle of Isiah's siblings, which coincidentally is what we're going to talk about up next. Isiah had 9 siblings, 6 brothers and 2 sisters, and it is hard enough raising one kid, but 9? That was a different ballgame entirely. This is why some of Isiah's siblings had unfortunate life experiences. Mary may have succeeded in scaring off the gang at her doorstep in that one scenario, but one of her kids was said to have become a member later on. Some of his siblings also served time, and 2 were reportedly addicted to heroin. And then there was Larry Thomas, who Isiah described as his biggest idol when it came to not just basketball, but even his lifestyle. Larry, like most of Isiah's brothers, was a great basketball player with so much promise. But some of the things he did off the court and on the street were things he didn't want his little bro to see. For one, Larry had to leave their mother's house at some point because he didn't want to live by her rules. But even worse, he was involved in shady things like pimping. Isiah, who used to love wearing his clothes as a kid, one day wore his brother's pimping suit, and when Larry saw him, he chased him down and whooped his butt. Then he warned him against trying to be like him.
Just had my clothes on, and had a pair of dice, and it's just shaking the dice, and I looked, and it was Junior.
And let's not also forget Lord Henry, who was considered the best basketball player in the family. Apart from being the highest scorer in a single season in the Catholic League, he was an all-city basketball player during his time at St. Philip's, but his dream of ever becoming a star crashed due to his poor academics and behavior. He was expelled and unfortunately turned to a heroin addiction, but Henry was able to bounce back a little and even went as far as finishing college later. Unfortunately, he was still using drugs, and one day, what they feared the most happened. Isiah, during the All the Smoke show, revealed that the heroin eventually killed Henry.
And then he just died a couple of years ago, you know.
Rest in peace. Condolences, man.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, his siblings all managed to finish high school, with 4 of them completing college. Besides, Isiah wouldn't have been a great basketball player if it weren't for his brothers. They ensured his protection from societal vices and warned him against doing drugs or joining a gang. According to Isiah, quote, "They told me about the mistakes they had made so that I wouldn't have to make them," end quote. His brothers were also his basketball coaches when he was young. They attended every game he played in high school and would call him out for any mistakes he made on the court after every game. Sometimes as late as 12 or 1 in the morning, they would tell Isiah to get dressed and drag his butt to the court to the surprise of their mother. They were basically his agents, father, and coach all wrapped up into one. But history was about to repeat itself with Isiah. His academics were trash just like his brothers before him, so when he almost missed getting a scholarship from high school, Larry knew something had to be done, or at least said. Larry recalls telling Isiah, "You're a screwed up kid. You can go one of 2 ways from here. I had a choice like this once. I chose hustling. It's a disgusting kind of life. You got the chance of a lifetime." End quote. After that, Isiah turned a new leaf, a leaf so beautiful he made it to the honor roll for 3 consecutive years at St. Joseph's, and after that, numerous colleges started fighting for his signature, and the rest, as they say, is history. So what do you guys think so far? His mom was really cool. I mean, she was immortalized by the city of Chicago and a movie of her own. But even in her lofty highs as a mother, there were some shortcomings with some of the other kids, Isiah Thomas's siblings. It is really sad what happened to some of Isiah's other siblings, including Henry, who sadly lost his life. But I can't help but to think, everything happens for a reason. And if you look at things that way, maybe some of the bad things that happened to Isiah helped propel him to be the person he was meant to be. Nevertheless, after Isiah left to play college basketball in Indiana, he would meet his future wife, a girl named Lynn Kendall. They would later marry, but a few months after their wedding, something happened that tested their union tremendously. Lynn Kendall has an extremely secret life, so much so that I'm convinced the CIA wouldn't be able to provide us with much of a background. But according to many credible sources out there, Kendall is the daughter of a former Secret Service agent, Gordon Lee Kendall. Her mother, Juanita Kendall, was a nurse, but whether Lynn has any siblings is a mystery. Nevertheless, she met Isiah in the early 1980s at the University of Indiana. They dated for years, and after Thomas received a $12 million contract extension from the Pistons, he proposed to Lynn. They married in 1985, but the wedding bells had not even stopped clinging when months later Isiah made the headlines due to an embarrassing lawsuit. A woman named Jenny Dawes had filed a paternity suit against the NBA star. Apparently, she and Isiah had been intimate months before he was to be married to Lynn. Her identity was never revealed, but she had become pregnant with what would be Isiah's first child. A piece of news that would have been delightful in a different situation almost ruined everything for the NBA icon. Dawes named the kid Mark, and in 1987 she and Isiah came to an agreement with the case, which was eventually completed in the apartment of a judge of the Michigan Court of Appeals. A sum of around $52,000 was paid by Isiah to Dawes. He was able to continue giving a monthly allowance of over $2,000 until Mark was 18 years old, after which he would receive $100,000. But later on, after Dawes fired and sued her former lawyer, Elbert Hatchett, in 1992, she reopened her case with Isiah. This time around, she demanded that the NBA legend acknowledge their child and pay a better fee for child support. And she got what she wanted. But how did all of this make Lynn Kendall feel? Well, obviously she must have been devastated, but she apparently forgave her husband. This is because the two never separated after the incident and have remained married ever since. They share 2 children together, Zeke and Lauren. Born in June of 1988, Zeke Thomas is almost as popular a celebrity as his dad, arguably. He is known for being a music producer and DJ. He has worked as an assistant programmer for Hot 97.1 FM and as a host for Fuse TV. He's also been a DJ for the NBA All-Star Game and has reportedly worked with the likes of Pitbull, Lady Gaga, and Diana Ross. The kid has obviously done a lot for himself already, but what really put Zeke in the spotlight is his struggle as a rape victim. In 2017, he came out about how he was raped when he was 12 years old, and then again when he was 27 in 2016. In an interview with Good Morning America, Zeke said he was finally comfortable to talk about his terrible experience and wishes he had been able to press charges on his rapist back then. He hadn't taken legal action because, according to him, he was afraid of being labeled a victim. He also didn't tell his father Isiah or any other person at the time, but now he is finally opening up and letting the world know about his struggles through music. Dealing With It was one of the songs he released to talk about his struggles. He's also an advocate for efforts against sexual assault and gender discrimination. But while Zeke is out there living his truth and speaking up against injustice, what is his sister Lauren up to? None of Isiah's kids took after their father as a basketball player or even an athlete, but there is one thing Lauren took that is totally unmistakable, and that's Isiah's persistent smile. If you want to overdose on smiles, just go to Lauren's Instagram page. There's a whole catalog of her and her infectious grin on there, and even her battle with narcolepsy, a neurological disorder, has apparently not affected her happiness. But while it seems like the only thing she probably knows how to do is smile, another thing she shares with her father is her choice of college. She reportedly graduated from the University of Indiana with a BSc degree in general studies. Anyway, whether Lauren and Zeke are in contact with their stepbrother Mark isn't known, but Mark also has an interesting life. Mark picked up after his father, not in basketball, but in poetry. In case you didn't know, Isiah Thomas loves poetry and has spoken about it before when he said, "I like poetry because it's free. There are no rules to it. You are not restricted or confined in any way." End quote. But whether he is sharing a passion with Mark or not, the kid never had a relationship with his biological father or any other father for that matter. He had been raised in Michigan by a single mother, Jenny Dons, who never married. He majored in writing at the New School College in New York City, but not much else is known about him beyond this. So while Isiah Thomas's children never followed in his footsteps as an athlete, at least he had children. In another video that we've done, we talk about another legend who never had a confirmed kid despite, according to him, sleeping with 20,000 women. Why not check out that video next?